I wanted to share a poem with you called Sensitivity Will Stay. And this poem is about healing my relationship to my sensitivity. Sensitivity, a teacher, the softness in the morning dew, the light meeting the spider's web in the grass for the first time in the day. Sensitivity, a loud cry, a bend in time and space. Sensitivity is a place to be, a place to move, a place to stay. So, today I want to talk about a topic that's close and dear to my heart, and that's sensitivity. So, I think if you're a sensitive person, for the longest time, you've probably heard you're too sensitive. And I think we look at sensitivity as if it's like this bad thing. And also, there's a lot of shame in there for being a sensitive person. Like, you tend to be shamed by people. I remember being shamed by obviously like family and stuff, but then I remember being shamed for it by friends too. So it's like this bigger societal thing where we don't like sensitive people, and I have a theory why. I won't get into it too much, but to talk about that slightly, sensitive people are able to sense, in my opinion, more information from their environment. And so we don't really like that in a fast-paced world that wants you to feel really numb and that wants you not to think too much about things. And sensitive people can't really unsee things. They see things and feel things so deeply. I think that's interesting, but I want to make this video because I want to embrace sensitivity, and I want to give it space, and I want to give it breathing room. And I also feel like there's not enough conversations about sensitivity that I found, and I want to give it voice because it's such a beautiful and powerful thing. And sensitivity can be a superpower if you learn how to harness it. And the unfortunate thing is that when you're sensitive, a lot of us are like shamed and put down for it. So oftentimes it's not like a skill that we want people to have, and so you almost don't develop this skill really well. Instead you try to hide away from it. And I think there's a beautiful resurgence of people embracing sensitivity, and I think we need that. I just think we need sensitive people and this feeling so deeply. It's such a beautiful thing to feel so deeply and to exist in such a deep way. And so let's give it space and let's give it voice. I want to get into social sensitivity. So like being sensitive socially. And I recently came across this term called high relational awareness. And when I did, I had this aha moment of finally being able to understand myself on a deeper level, and for the first time to finally have language for this internal experience that I've had all my life. So I want to get into sort of a description on sensitivity and leading into high relational awareness then. And I'm gonna read from Psychology Today, which is something that was looked down upon when I was doing my psychology degree, but I think it's a really good description of what it is. Highly sensitive people are born with higher than average sensitivity to physical, social, emotional stimuli, and are therefore more likely to notice subtleties. They're also more likely to be sensitive to interpersonal discord and other people's moods, as well as to notice micro-expressions. What this means is that highly sensitive people are more likely than non-highly sensitive people to be tuned in and reactive to relational dynamics. And that's the piece that I want to focus on. So, from my understanding, what high relational awareness is being able to pick up on social cues more acutely. So, like, way more. And that being things like a slight change in behavior when you're in a room with people, a slight change in people's tones, or a shift in energy in the room. You're also usually able to notice different relational dynamics that are going on in the room, and also when people are being left out, and you just have this like high resolution focus on your interactions with people and on other people's interactions with each other. And I like to think about it as being able to see interactions through like these deeper layers. The thing about that is that it's actually linked to emotional intelligence, and that makes sense because you're able to notice all of these dynamics and layers and what's going on in the room. So yeah, having high relational awareness is not a bad thing. In fact, it's part of emotional intelligence, and it means that you can read the room basically, and probably that little bit more. Like you can probably read the room on steroids type of thing. And yeah, you're just able to notice things like, is someone being left out? Is somebody okay? You're kind of just able to notice those things much easier. Yeah, it's like, you know, those thoughtful friends that you have there. I feel like those thoughtful friends are probably just like have probably this higher relational awareness. So as you can see, like high relational awareness can be this really cool superpower to have. And when I say superpower, I don't mean it in like the woo-woo way, even though I am a woo-woo person, but I mean more so like just this really big skill that you have. And I think now more than ever, these are some of the most amazing skills to have, because you basically notice other humans and you're aware where other people are at, and you can try to meet other people where they're at and be there for your fellow human beings and or enjoy what's going on. Like I just think it's such a superpower, and that mixed in with feeling so deeply is like, wow, like that is like such a cool and in-depth human experience. Just also to mention, like, this is my personal experience and this is what relates to me, and I'm talking about it from this perspective, but I'd love to hear like if your perspective is slightly different. So I'm just kind of learning more about myself and sharing it through that lens. So I'd love to hear your perspective too. So as you can imagine, and as you can kind of see where this is leading, having this relational awareness is a great thing, but it can also have its downfalls. So if you're like over reading the room, and then if you're taking that personally, and if it's leading to like thoughts like, they don't like me, or there was a slight change in their behavior, a slight change in energy. And I think naturally what comes to my mind is people who struggle with this just naturally, I think, end up having lower self-esteem and maybe aren't as sure of themselves. So I think while it's such a cool skill to have, I feel like it's quite a big skill to hold if you don't have that grounding in yourself. I also think it can be a downfall in the sense of it can be like a pretty lonely experience if you don't know many other people that are experiencing this. And it can also be like a really intense experience, again, especially if you don't know how to harness it. But I just think it's a pretty intense way to live when you can see through those layers and when you feel so deeply. And honestly, part of what I think is that it can be maladaptive from like trauma. So if you have had to pay attention to what's going on in your environment to survive, and if you had to kind of watch out for like physical, emotional danger, physical, emotional, mental danger, or if there was like uncertainty in your environment and your environment was constantly like shifting with emotions or with what was going on, I think it's an adaptation of our mind to that. It's like, well, we have to pay attention to what's going on in our environment, and it's so easy to then, like, even after you're out of that environment, to just be stuck in that space. And I think that that's how it can be maladaptive. So I think it's like it can just become a way of surviving. You're constantly paying attention to your environment, and you feel that it's personal. You feel that you need to watch out for the subtle signs so that danger doesn't happen. Honestly, I think it can be so debilitating and so exhausting. And so that's why coming across the term high relational awareness made so much sense to me. But I'm like, oh wow, that's actually a skill. Like, this maladaptive thing can also be a skill that you can harness if you know how to. And something that rings true so deeply for me is this song by Heynderickx, The Bug Collector. She talks about all of these beings in the environment that are kind of out to get you. So there's a line that there's all the lines, but there's like one of the lines that I have saved here. And there's a praying mantis prancing on your bathtub, and you swear it's a priest from a past life out to get you. And I digress, 'cause I must make you the perfect evening. I try my best to put the priest inside the jam jar. And it feels, I don't know why, but it feels like somebody whoever she's talking about in this song, I can really envision it. The care she has for this person who's like really struggling, and he thinks, or they think that all of these beings are out to get them. And all she's trying to do is prove that nobody is out to get the person. And it really resonates with me, and it for some reason really resonates with this thing of perceiving your social environment in an intense maladaptive way. And so I just love that song. That song really just reminds me of this, so I wanted to share it with you. And I just want to mention as well that that kind of when you and I think this is the same with like social anxiety, but when you can perceive what's going on in your environment to such an intense degree, you can then internalize that and overthink about it and catastrophize about it for days, if not weeks, if not like more time than that. And it's so easy to spiral. And that's also the experience for me from being that kind of person. So it can really turn into this like really strong scale, or just this like really dark thing that takes over your life and gives you so much anxiety to even be around people. So I want to make a little note here, and I wrote something on it that I want to share with you. So an important note that I've made is that just because this has been the case, it doesn't mean that you're not perceiving what's actually there. In fact, you might be picking up on accurate social dynamics and people's behavior, which I think is an important point here. Just because you have this high sensitivity that stems from an unhealthy place and often manifests in unhealthy and overwhelming ways, it doesn't mean you're not perceiving things properly. And so learning to trust yourself, I think, is the biggest thing here. So I want to get into what we can do as highly sensitive people who perceive social situations really intensely, and even more so like in a maladaptive way. One of the things that I feel like has been huge for me is to not internalize it. People's tones, people's behaviors, what people say in situations, to not internalize it. And by not internalizing it, it's like having this boundary of I'm not going to let that in. Like if there's somebody in the space who's really inconsiderate, or who's really unthoughtful, or who's saying something or has a certain tone, to not internalize it, become more of an observer. And I feel like that's been a good first step for me. I think the other thing is to take responsibility, especially when you have lower self-esteem or self-doubt. Like, watch yourself. One of the things that often rings true for me is that I think I play a role in how I express myself. So what can happen is oftentimes when I start to speak, especially to particular people, I come from this place, I think, where I maybe like put my shoulders down a little bit, and I don't really feel confident when I'm speaking, and I often jump into conversations like that, and then I end up going on a tangent and kind of just mumbling and going around in circles. And the thought that comes into my mind is that what I'm saying is not worth hearing. And I think that it's really important to take responsibility in your social situations as somebody who struggles with this. I think that's it's a really powerful thing to be able to be like, okay, look, I think people aren't listening to me, and I am noticing that to like an intense degree, but I personally need to have something to work on there. You know, it's almost like a mirror that for things that you can work on. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I think previously I would have gotten upset over that, whereas now I'm like, okay, no, I know that the person's reaction was like that because I actually just didn't express myself properly, or I didn't, come across as confident. And I think the reality is that we do like to listen to confident people. And I think it's important to take that responsibility and to grow, especially when it comes to that self-worth and self-esteem. And as somebody that's sensitive, that was probably put down for you. And you were probably put down and shamed, and to the point where you're like struggling to have your voice and to speak confidently. So yeah, I think some of it is our responsibility, and it's within our power to work on, places where we have lower self-esteem or less confidence. Another thing I want to mention though is that although it is our responsibility as sensitive people who struggle with these things, I think it's really important to be mindful of who you surround yourself with. And because you're a sensitive person, it is important to have friends that care for you and that try to at least understand. If they don't understand, to at least try to understand your sensitivity. And it's not their responsibility, right? It's not their responsibility to work through those issues for you. But I do think to a certain extent, as friends, we do have responsibility towards people. And I actually don't think that's something that our generation is ready for. I don't think we like being responsible for each other. But I hope that makes sense, because I do think that if we value people and if we want people in our lives, it's important that we help to bring out the best in them. And that's what I'm trying to get at here. Even if you're a sensitive person, good friends will get that best out in you, out of your sensitivity as well, and will embrace that sensitivity just the way we embrace other things in people. Like people are fun, and people are extroverted and introverted, and just the way we bring out the best in people in those ways. I think sensitivity is in line with all those other things. So our responsibility, but also good friends around matters a lot. So another thing that's really important for me as a sensitive person, and in general, but even more so as a sensitive person, is to watch out who my nervous system gets activated around. So I'm not necessarily saying that it's something to do with that other person, just because my nervous system gets activated around them, so therefore they equal to bad. It's not what I'm saying. But I would watch out for that, and because the body knows so well. So I would watch out for that, and also try to understand, what is my body telling me? And I feel like oftentimes by working through this, I have been able to understand who is safe for me and who is not, and who I can express myself around. Because that's another thing you'll notice is like, some people are just really hard to express yourself around. Why is that? Is that something to do with you, or is it something to do with them? People will teach us things. People will teach us the things that we need to work on, but people will also teach us and let us know who they are quite early on. They'll let us know that they're not safe, they're not going to listen, they're not curious. And I think if you're a sensitive person who has that emotional intelligence and are looking for in-depth friendships, then watch out who your nervous system gets activated around, Another thing I learned big time here for the type of person that I am is to observe people's capacity and to understand that it's not personal. So just because a person does not have capacity and cannot meet you where you're at, that has nothing to do with you. Notice that early on with people, and understand that it has nothing to do with you. It's not a reflection of you. It has nothing to do with your worth. And also, people have different goals for their friendships, for connecting. And I'm talking specifically about friendships in this case, because that's what has taught me a lot. But also, it can be the same case in having social interactions with family members or strangers. It's like people have different goals for interacting. So their capacity just has nothing to do with you. And I think the more you learn how to hone this skill and to be okay in yourself, the more you'll be able to just observe and also step away from people who don't make you feel good. And not that it's people's responsibility to make you feel good, but if you don't feel good around somebody, it's okay to not be around them. So yeah, observing that capacity is also key. And yeah, as a sensitive person, listen to your instincts, because you have a gift and you have knowledge and can see layers that maybe other people can see, and honor that inside yourself and be mindful who you surround yourself with. I think the real healing comes when we learn to trust ourselves and to take actions to have our best interest in mind. And I think that can sound selfish, but I think that that's key. Like, taking care of yourself first is key, and then you can take better care of your other relationships if you're nurturing yourself. And also protect your sensitivity. Like, it is such a beautiful thing, and not everybody deserves for you to share that with them, and not everybody deserves for you to share your tender heart with them. And I feel like I've been learning that, and I'm learning that the hard way. Don't just let anybody in, especially if you're, in general, again, I'll keep saying this, like in general, but especially if you're a sensitive person, because we tend to absorb a lot. So I'm going to go over self-care as somebody who is sensitive and has high relational awareness. So the first thing that I have on my list is to choose your relationships wisely. As I went over it, is just be careful who you surround yourself with. Another thing is to protect yourself. So I do this before even going into social situations. It's so important to know where you're at. Like, how am I doing? Especially when you're going to go into social situations with people who maybe you're not too sure you want to be around. You're not too sure of their energy. Or if you've had any previous experience that hasn't been too great. It's so important to check in with yourself previously before going in. And what are you bringing to the table? Are you feeling a little bit anxious? Are you feeling a little bit stressed? Are you feeling a little bit ungrounded? And just be mindful, because if you bring that with yourself into environments where you can't just relax, you often tend to spiral a little bit in the interaction and after the interaction. At least I know that I do. So just that protection and knowing where you're at, and not being afraid to take breaks when you're interacting with people. So you can take a break by going to the bathroom. You can take a break by getting up, and if you're in a place where you're having food, getting a glass of water. You can take a break by just taking a breath as well, while you're talking, whenever you feel like you need it, because at the end of the day, who cares? Like, you need to be okay, and you need to focus on being grounded in yourself. And it's such a trial and error, and you're constantly learning when you start to bring in that self-protection and self-preservation, because nobody's gonna do it for you like you will. Another thing that I do is, social situations can be a lot for me, so shaking it off by dancing, just literally shaking my body before, but like also just after social situations. And especially, like, sometimes I have found myself being around people and I just want the energy off. Like, I literally just, get off the energy of people. Like, I'm finding it that as I'm new to this, after interacting, I can kind of carry a lot in like my shoulders or my throat or my sacral area here. So it's so important to just like move the body and check in with like what's going on after interacting. Yeah, movement is so important, because we are energy and we are interacting with other energies. And as a sensitive person who doesn't have many boundaries, I think the best way to describe that is like, sometimes I feel like we're missing a layer of skin and things just get absorbed a lot easier. Especially as a sensitive person, it's just so important to just get rid of stuff out and learn how to create that layer of skin that most people seem to have. So that's all I have to share for now, and I hope you enjoyed that. and let me know how you get on. Like, I would love to hear from other sensitive people, from non-sensitive people. What does that even mean to you? Um, Also, I think we can be so frightened by sensitive people. So, like, if you are feeling that, I would ask the question, what makes you feel so uncomfortable around that? Because it is a thing. I think people get really uncomfortable around sensitive people or people who can perceive a lot or feel things deeply. But yeah, that's it for me. And take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Bye.